Hey guys, Tommy Carrigan here with Tommy Untamed. Thanks for tuning in. We got an awesome guest today. You're going to enjoy it. To talk about all things vaccines. And obviously, that's for the longtime listeners. That's how I got banned from YouTube and iTunes back in 2021. Was interviewing Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Mull, amongst like every other doctor too. Um, and that's what got me banned. And it wasn't necessarily that I had a particular passion about. I thought what they were doing was wrong. I thought that coercion and censoring data and killing people. I thought that was wrong. But it wasn't really that. Above all else, I was just like, I feel like I should be able to say whatever I want. So that's kind of what the podcast was born in, that baptism by fire with talking about vaccines. So if anything, I don't know. I figure I'll just keep doing it to keep poking the bear for no other reason than to keep poking the. Why not? I mean, like, they've already banned me from it. What are you gonna ban me from? But please introduce yourself and kind of tell everyone what your background is, and then we'll just dive into it.
Hi, so thanks so much for having me on the show, Tommy. And my name is Shaz Khan. So I'm not a medical professional or a scientist or even a parent, but about 10 years ago, I started doing research on vaccines. My specialty is in marketing communications, and I've always loved science. So I kind of educated myself on scientific vocabulary in the last like 10 years. And specifically, when I started delving into the subject of vaccines, which I was inspired to do so because my father passed away 2 months after a flu shot. And it got me asking questions because there was some weird things about his conditions. Like he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, non-smoker, but he was in hospital with all kinds of weird neurological symptoms. So when I found out he took the flu vaccine, first thing I did was go and read a package insert and was quite shocked to find out that neurological symptoms after the flu vaccine is pretty much well known. So that basically started me getting to ask questions, started with reading some books. One of the best ones I could advise anybody is Dissolving Illusions, which dives into the history of vaccines, written by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys and Roman Bystrionic. They also have lots of graphs to show incidence of diseases and the effect of vaccines over time. And then I decided to go to the libraries and the National Archives to see what I could dig up from government documents and from medical documents that basically you could only get a hold of in the libraries that weren't available on the internet. So in doing so, I found a lot of documents that really quite shocked me. I never had an intention of putting any of this in a book. It was really for my own personal investigation. But when I found the documents that I came across in the archives, and all the hidden injuries that were acknowledged basically since over a century, if not since the beginning of smallpox vaccination in the late 1700s, early 1800s. I figured this needs to be put into a book that people then can access and basically collect all the information that they need on facts. There's about 1,300 facts just relating to vaccines, information on the pharmaceutical industry as well about mergers and acquisitions over time, as well as some information about how adverse events are recorded, how they've been registered, categorized, and the coding system that we have under the International Classification of Disease and Death. So that's basically a background on me.
It's you clarify you're not a doctor or a scientist, and neither am I. But it is kind of it's kind of funny how people find the need, myself included. You do almost do it subconsciously. And I get, it's not like you and I are out there prescribing medications, but there is such a poo pooing of anyone that reads anything on their own. Like I have a biology degree. I love the Cold War. I love reading about the Cold War. I just finished a book this morning about like a submarines. No one ever once, no one ever once comes on this show or comments like, you are not a Cold War authority. You are spouting myth. You're out of your lane. With anything else, it's not only not negative. People look at it, they go, "Oh, you don't need that. Learning's good on your own. That's admirable." For everything else, but the one thing where it's like, it's federally mandated. I have to put this thing in my body. Like, can I read about it? And it's immediately you're put down. And again, if you're out there practicing medicine without a license, that's not good. But there is just a general looking down upon, like, oh, let me guess, you did your own research. Like, why is that an issue? Like, why in God's name is that an issue? Like, that I'm doing my own research. And again, it's not like you're going out there and you're saying, based on what I learned, this is what should and shouldn't happen. But just the general, and I guess I always look at it like, so one, if it's anything else, used for instance the Cold War, no one cares. They're just like, "Yeah, you're reading about it on your own," and or no one ever has a question. No one ever labels anything misinformation or conspiracy that is like obviously true. And the analogy I always use is like gravity, 9.81 meters per second square. So here's some chapstick. I'm going to drop it, and there we go. Now I all of a sudden I have a feeling that it's actually 12 meters per second squared, and no one. You might have one comment, somebody like, "Hey, this idiot, doesn't have a calculator, and it's on a camera. Shouldn't he be able to calculate the rate it's falling over the frames per time?" But there's no banner on YouTube. There's not one of those blue banners that says, well, actually gravity's been proven to be this. And no one says, well, the science is settled. They look at you and they go, this guy's an idiot. And if anyone really, really did have an issue with me, they'd be like, I'm going to show you right now. Like, get on the camera, Tommy. Pick up the thing. Drop it. Okay, I'm going to record it and I'm going to show you. It fell this fast, this much time. Look how fast it's going. Because it doesn't matter. Because it's truth, and there is no thread to find. There's no conspiracy of gravity to find. It's so self evident. It's the same reason like people don't debate, flat earthers. It's like, yeah, I don't go for it. I don't care. People really care about this one, and not even just for let's play devil's advocate. Maybe they care because you're influencing other people to not get these, and let's say there's a public health implication. Sure, I'll grant them that. There's some gray area there. But should it not matter personally? Like if it's like, well, I did my science and I think that this is all actually witchcraft. No one would be like, get him the vaccine. They'd just be like, that's crazy. Leave him alone. The only thing I can think of is, wow, there must be some very powerful interests, financial or other, behind quashing this. There's no big Earth. There's no military globe complex that's like shut that man up. Stop talking about. They don't care, and that's just what's always. That's what early on got me kind of curious about this because nothing else I talked about on the podcast mattered. But then this was like blowing like a silent dog whistle, and people just, excuse my French, they just went ape shit. And so here we are, 5 years later, still poking it. So like, and for everybody listening, the link to your book will be in the description. Was it just so you said you didn't set out on making a book? Is it something to where there was just so much there was no one place to put it, or was it something where the revelations were so daunting or so I don't know forceful that you felt the need to do it?
I would say the latter for sure. Also, because as I mentioned, there was no book. Again, apart from Dissolving Illusions, there aren't that many books that really delve into the history of vaccines. We just basically, put the faith in what our authorities tell us is the history of vaccines, which is, they saved us from smallpox, they saved us from polio, they saved us from measles. Um, and the fact that there was no book that really collected in a neutral format, like old product catalogs from the 1910s, old information and documents that came from primarily the UK National Archives. For me, it was just really important that it exist in some kind of format that people could access either electronically or physically, and also as a reference guide for myself to have it all in one place. Because otherwise, you need like 10 different books and you still don't have all the information that you really need on the history of vaccines. And the product catalogs for me was a huge thing because they don't exist online. You can't get a 1910 product catalog from Burroughs Wellcome or Park Davis, who are some of the old vaccine manufacturers. It doesn't exist online. You have to go to a library and find it. And most people don't actually go to libraries anymore. So it was definitely, I guess, something that I felt I had to do. And I was fortunate enough to be able to meet the right people to get me in front of Skyhorse Publishing because I'm a first-time author. I mean, I have self-published a little book on the virus, which you can see just there in the corner, but that's self-published and that I started in 2017, again in the context of vaccines, because I figured if people understood viruses better, maybe they wouldn't be so afraid of them and hence wouldn't be so easily, say it, conned into getting vaccines because they're scared of a virus. So, but the information in the book, most of it you will not find anywhere else. I've tried to make it as similar, as digestible as possible. So it's a lot of visuals. My background is in graphic design, so I was able to put the
Yeah,
layout
I taught
together.
myself graphic design. You can see some I got. See some of the. I taught myself graphic design after college.
Okay.
You can see some of those I made. Yeah. Not
So,
important, not
and my
important.
degree is in product design. So we were taught the language of marketing and how do you sell products to people and create demands for people. So that background I was familiar with, and I understood a lot of the language that was being used to sell vaccines was more marketing language than it was science based. So for me, that was what basically was the impetus to write this book and to put it in all one format. So
Which I'm not even, I'm not even again. America, for all of its flaws, also has all of its pros. And like, if people are like, well, they're just trying to sell things. I'm like, yeah, and that's kind of how it works. It's just what it is. Like, and I've again on this show, I've never told anyone, and not in one episode have I ever told anyone not to get the vaccine, because I personally don't care what adults do with their bodies. I legitimately don't. It's not a facade. It's not just a phrase. I don't care. I don't care. You've seen those guys that put like horns in their head and they get scale tattoos all over. Go for it, man. This is your incarnation. Go wild. My issue was like I had on like Dr. McCullough like 1,000 times, and he was talking about like the heart attacks they were seeing, and it was the equivalent of the heart of like an 80-year-old smoker. And then he'd always finish it and be like, but it was from an 8-month old. And that always got me to where I was like, now it is like a moral obligation. Now there is the God, universe, whatever you want to call it. This has now come on my plate. I happened to have a podcast at the time. It was like 1/100th the size, but no one else was talking about it. And what you said about having all the different books, when I was studying for the MCAT, I went crazy, like OCD, because we had all these different reviews: the Berkeley review, Kaplan, Princeton, what are all of them, and they all covered for the most part all the same stuff, but each one of them had like 10% of something that the others didn't, and it always drove me crazy. So I got all of them and then made my own study guide just to have it all in one spot, and then whatever. But like, so I get that. I understand that personally from like an OCD level of like I just wanted it all in one spot. And but again, there just seems to be a major pushback against it, and that to me is just the most interesting. I think the not that I know, but I think the most. I think Occam's razor would dictate because there's a lot of money involved. Like it's not always some. There are conspiracy again, Cold War history. There are a lot of conspiracies. A lot of times things just are because somebody's making bank. Somebody's getting a new 3-floor vacation home or a yacht. Like it is. It's not interesting. You go, oh, that's why they did. Walmart did that. They got like a gold-plated Lamborghini. Like it sucks, but like it's not shadowy. With vaccines, how has it shifted your view? Because the first kind of the gut reflex, right, is to immediately overcorrect and say, well, it's all bad. Throw it all out the window, right? And that's not always the answer. Maybe sometimes it is. I have no idea. But that's not always the answer. It's if you eat something, you get sick, it doesn't mean stop eating. You're like, yeah, just don't buy that like shitty brand anymore. Where are your thoughts? And I have no vested interest. I personally don't care. Where are your thoughts on it? Like people like Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone, they come on here and they're still like, yeah, you should probably get that one. You should probably get that one. Is it? Are you in the mindset of take it all, throw it, like burn it down and start anew? Or is any part of you like, yeah, these newer ones seem to be a cash grab? What are your thoughts on that? And again, I truly don't care. No right or wrong answer.
well, again, when I started my research 10 years ago, I came from a neutral standpoint, and I only had questions about the flu vaccine because that's obviously what alerted to me
Yeah.
to the problems with the vaccines. As I'm not a parent myself, it was never really on the radar, so I never had to make that choice. And they don't push vaccines here as hard in Switzerland. We don't have any mandates, and I don't work in the medical field, so I'm not obligated to get them in my professional context. But based on the research that I have done, there are some huge holes for me which haven't been addressed still to this day in vaccinology. And I did go and invest in a vaccinology course in the University of Oxford in 2019 before COVID kicked off. And the question, I was actually quite shocked by the questions that they couldn't answer or the responses I got to some of my questions. And the primarily one was, how is it that still nowadays in 2025 or in 2019 at the time when I was doing the course, how is it then vaccinology only looks at the immune system, doesn't look at anything else? it looks at the immune system as if it was completely isolated from the rest of the body, only looks at antibodies, only looks at T cell response, only looks at those mechanisms, doesn't take into account the nervous system, doesn't take into account the endocrine or the digestive system, doesn't take into account any other systems. And it looks as if our body is just the immune system, and that's the only thing that gets triggered by a vaccine, which for me is completely outdated. I mean, you just have to look at the latest developments in science and the understanding of, what was really reality and the fact that, quantum physics and all this. None of this is applied to medical research and medical understanding because I think it would throw out a lot of the conceptions that we have and a lot of the basis and foundations for making medication, which oftentimes it works to, suppress a symptom, but we don't often understand the mechanism, like aluminum. We still don't completely fully understand the mechanism of aluminum in the body, which for me is shocking after 100 years of using it in vaccines as an adjuvant. We understand it stimulates the immune system. We don't exactly understand how, and we don't understand all the different forms of aluminum. Now we have proprietary, sorry, versions of aluminum like AHS that belongs to Merck, which is very hard for independent scientists to go and do analysis for because they have to get permission from Merck to do so. So based on that, I would question every single vaccine on the market at this point. Also because we don't have a choice anymore as consumers. Like back in the days, if you go to the hospital and you had a wound and someone recommended you a tetanus shot, you could get the tetanus shot on its own. This does not exist anymore. You cannot get it on its own. Even here in Switzerland, where you can get it as just a double shot with diphtheria, so DT, when you go to a hospital, usually what's given to you is a six in one. So if you want to get a tetanus shot, then you have to get diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, Hib, IPV, which is inactivated polio, and hepatitis B. So a lot of people are going to say no to that shot because they don't want all the rest of it. They wanted the tetanus, but they don't want the others. The same with measles. I mean, here in Switzerland, you can order the single measles vaccine on its own. You have to pre-order it. I don't think you even have that choice in the States. You might still do in certain locations. But again, if someone just wants to get vaccinated against measles, you can't because it's in a packaged form. And I find this problematic also from the surveillance post-adverse event issue, which if you're looking at a combined vaccine and you've got a six-in-one shot, it's much harder to identify what antigen might have actually caused the adverse event that you're reacting to. So that's another problem. And we've given way too much power to the pharmaceutical industry to determine what products are available on the market. Back in the days, there used to be a lot of the state involved in saying, yeah, we had state labs. We would make the tetanus vaccine. We would make that available through the states, different states. That's not the case anymore. It's a completely private endeavor with public money. Make that sure that people understand that public money is used to develop vaccines, even if they are sold back to us for profit. Obviously, the CDC program, vaccines for children, you can get vaccines for free if they're recommended on the schedule. But, adults usually, unless you're over 65 and you're eligible for the flu or the pneumococcal vaccine, you pay out of pocket. So for me, the whole problem is the whole vaccine program, basically. I mean, if I was a scientist nowadays, I would say we have to go back to the drawing board, take into consideration what we understand today about the human body, maybe look differently at why infectious diseases occur, what can we do to prevent them. That doesn't necessarily mean, stimulating your whole immune system and creating possible problems elsewhere, which we've seen with numerous vaccines. And I would also ask for full transparency because a lot of what I uncovered is that government authorities behind closed doors will admit to pretty high rates of adverse events and serious adverse events, not just talking about, swelling the injection site or soreness. We're talking about neurological symptoms which affect the daily lives of the people who have been injured, talking about death, talking about autoimmune diseases which are on the rise, especially in children nowadays, cancer. And we don't test vaccines even today to see if they can potentially induce cancer or any kinds of mutagenesis, which is surprising when you look at hepatitis B and HPV vaccine, which two of them are supposed to prevent cancer. So it'd be logical to go and test those to make sure they can't cause cancer, but that's not done either. So based on that, I would question the whole vaccine program. And I wouldn't be afraid to say that. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not asking anyone to listen to my advice or listen to me. Go and do your own research. It is important that people do their own research and read themselves because unfortunately, many people in my situation who now question the whole vaccine program got there because of some kind of personal tragedy, or they witnessed something in hospital, they witnessed injuries that were then kind of dismissed or not acknowledged by the authorities, which then creates a whole problem of trust, which again, I've lost trust in our public health authorities, even here in Switzerland, because they still to this day continue to insist that the COVID vaccine is perfectly safe and effective, and that the injuries are almost non-existent. And that was even just recently, 2 weeks ago, from a mainstream media outlet here in Switzerland who claimed that vaccine injury after COVID was almost non-existent. That was their phrase.
Hey there! Are you tired of skyrocketing subscription costs? With Q Broadcast, you get an entertainment package that is unmatched by other providers, with all your favorite content in one affordable bundle. Enjoy a 15-day trial for just $14.99. And if you refer 3 friends and they stick around, your subscription is free. Say goodbye to high-priced subscriptions, contracts, and hassles, and say hello to streaming simplicity with Q Broadcast. This changes everything.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
And I don't believe these people are stupid. That's like a cop out, and it's like a funny answer to say, like, "Oh, they're so dumb they can't." Some people are stupid. The people that do this, it's willful. They're either getting paid off, or they don't care, or they dislike you. But there's honestly, so yeah, it kind of seems like, so when you lose that trust, it's not like a one-off thing of like, well, I'm not taking that shot. When something, things that were, at least to me, up until 20, you just kind of, you don't even question it. You just revere it as an institution. Oh, it's the CDC, it's the FDA, it's the WHO, it's the NIH. You're like, yeah, these, the best of the best go there. A lot of them pass up. I know some of the doctors that went there, and they passed up huge salaries to go do because they thought it was like the ultimate good, and it's like, that's awesome. And but once those lie to your face in such an egregious manner too, it's not like it was a little white lie. It's not like, kind of a fib. When it's outright like people my age dropping dead from heart attacks in front of your eyes, and then you talk about it, and then you get banned. When it's so in your face, I don't think like a drastic overcorrection can really be a surprise. again, it's not like it's a little bit of a thing, and it's yeah, people got a little hesitant, and then they kind of met back in the middle a couple years later. It's so in your face that I think the only rational thing would be to go throw it all out, and 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 that might not be right. Like, let's say I say I'm never getting one of these again, and if I have kids one day, they're never getting it. And it might be something where I learn a hard lesson. Who knows? Maybe they die of polio. And then that will be the overcorrection to the overcorrection. And then it will eventually kind of come back to the middle. But it doesn't really seem like there is much of an other rational response when it's not only in your face and it's not only mandated. You're not only like legally fired or let go from a government job, but then you are outright removed from social media, which is the modern town square. It's not 2004 anymore. We can't call Facebook like a novelty. Like it is the future. Like that's the town square. If all of that happens to you, I think the only logical response you can have, and I'm 34. I have a biology degree. I got into med school. I got into pharmacy school, and I do a podcast, and I get to talk to whoever I want for a living. My case is in no way, shape, or form even remotely normal for like the average person my age, 34. If you're 34, you got a wife and kids and a house, and you're moving on up the corporate life, you don't have time for this shit. So all you're gonna do is make a snap judgment. Go, all right, well, that person's kid died. That person's grandma died. They both got banned from Instagram for talking about it. I don't have time to go in and read 1,000 books, but I do know how I can wrap this up really quickly. Just no. The answer's no. It'd be like with playing video games or something, where we're all arguing about whose turn it is to play, and eventually Dad's just like, no one can play it. Go to bed. It's over. And that's going to be the response to the vast majority of people who don't have time for this, and they have a child who is just the light of their life, and they're like, I cannot possibly sit down and read 19,000 books, like the real Anthony Fauci or your book, and you'd be like, I don't even have time to watch this full podcast. But I'm seeing all these little bits of information. You know what? I think I'll just, yeah, they're not getting any. And I'm going to take my chances that in 2025 they don't catch polio. And I can't even look down at that. Now, I feel like just basic human experience would say overcorrections are almost never good, regardless of what they are. They're almost never good. But I don't think it can really be a surprise to anyone that this is what the vast majority of people will do. Who they see this and they don't have any, whatever. They have a degree in supply line or something, and they're gonna make a very simple decision of like, yeah, you're just not getting anything. Wrap it up. The end. I gotta take them to softball. Like that's the end of it. I don't care. And that's probably what's gonna happen. And whether it's good or bad, I have no idea. Maybe it is. Maybe they're all bad, and life span goes way up. Maybe they're all good, and we just start seeing like a rash of polio genocidal waves. And I don't know, but I don't think anyone can look at an overreaction to anyone saying like what you're saying of like, yeah, I think it all needs to be reexamined. I don't know what else is the rational response.
The
Like,
rational response as a public health authority would to actually take the serious side effects that are being witnessed and recognized and take them seriously and spend the research, or spend the money to do the research to understand what the biological mechanisms are. Because I mean, you talk about overcorrections, but what's interesting is the authorities have known for over 50 years that we do not have an adequate vaccine adverse event reporting system. So this is in the US, which is obviously, one of the leading countries in the world with regards to that. They put in place VAERS, so the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which is a passive system, which was, I think, started operating in 1988. To this day, they still say this is not a very good system to establish causation or to take, safety signals seriously. They've known this since the 1970s, even before they put the system in place, because they had lots of recommendations of what system they should do. They wanted to do an active system, but then they said it was too expensive. They're gonna have to hire people in every state to just look at that. So they went for the easier option, which is the passive system, and then obviously the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, which allowed for families to actually get compensation that's paid by taxpayer money, by the way, not pharmaceutical and industry money, So for me, when I look at this and I see, okay, they've known about this for over 50 years, but they haven't tried to make any correction to the system that they know is flawed. Why would they do that? For me, that's a huge red flag. And I don't know why the authorities, I mean, I could understand why the pharmaceutical industry wouldn't do this because obviously their bottom line is profit. Let's be blunt. They're not
Right.
interested really in the health of patients because a healthy population is not a good market for business. But the public health authorities who are mandated, who are trusted by their citizens to actually look after the health of the populations, aren't doing their job, and they haven't for over 50 years. So I think this overcorrection, maybe which should be exaggerated to saying, no, I'm not getting any, is a completely understandable response when you're not getting any kind of one acknowledgement and two trying to fix the problem because it's the first thing you do. I mean, every human, makes a mistake. The first thing you do is you admit to your mistake and you try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But we don't see this coming from public health authorities. Quite the contrary. It's like they're untouchable. You can't question anything anymore, and COVID has really exposed that in a big way. And especially when you talk to people like Robert Malone and Peter McCullough, who have, multiple degrees behind them, PhDs. I think Peter McCullough has like maybe even two PhDs.
Yeah,
When they're still
crazy.
dismissing these people with that caliber, there's something incredibly fishy going on, which, I mean, trust once it's broken, it's very hard to repair. And this is something that even here in Switzerland, they're very aware of, and they're trying to build trust because vaccine hesitancy is increased. And obviously, they scare us with, oh, measles is coming back drastically. Like we don't know how to treat measles, which again is not true. We know how to treat measles. If it's well looked after, it's inconvenient for sure. You may have to take a week off work as a parent, but it's not a deadly disease. And even before the vaccine came out, it was really mild. Again, in countries like Africa, where they say measles is killing 2 million kids per year, I'd really like to know because statistics on that aren't actually very clear. It's more like extrapolations and estimates. When you ask the World Health Organization for concrete evidence or statistics or some kind of study that shows that, they don't provide you anything because they don't have that documentation. If kids are dying from measles in Africa, maybe it's more because they're not having access to clean food, access to basic health care.
Yeah.
Nutritious food and clean water is the main thing that would help these kids, get better, in my opinion. But we don't look at that because, again, you can't make a profit from it. And I remind your viewers that the vaccine industry is gigantic, especially now that you've got the biotech industry that's very much involved in vaccine production and manufacture and development. You're talking about probably millions of people who are employed around the world in vaccines, from the factories to procurement to packaging to actually developing lab scientists. So if people suddenly stop actually getting vaccines, that potential industry could collapse. And I think that's a huge fear, not only from the public health point where they say, the pertussis, whooping cough, measles, all these diseases going to go up again. Polio, I wouldn't believe that would be an issue because if you look at polio, it never had the same kind of what's the word? The same situation as regular infectious diseases in the 20th century kind of came out of nowhere. And we could see a lot of correlation between the use of pesticides, the use of other neurological damaging products, which we don't use so much anymore, but still using in places like India and Africa because they have less robust regulatory agencies, I would say. But yeah, I think it's sorry, I lost my train of thought of that, but
No, no, no. That's not. It's the overcorrection. It's what would the
mm,
rational response be? And you said what the rational response would be if the public health organizations or anyone in any semblance of authority came out and went, "Hey, totally get what you guys are concerned about. This is, I get it from," but they haven't done that, and
mm,
that's kind of like what I'm factoring in is no, no, that is like what should have happened. What I'm saying is like in light of reality of what we all experienced in the last 5 years, there is this is the next. I don't know what the exact quote is, and I know I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like man, I think it's from the 1800s in America. It's like man's first line of airing grievances, the ballot box. You can go say what The next is I don't know, the jury box. You can go to court. Like the third is the soapbox. You go stand on the corner, and then the last is the cartridge box, meaning you get a gun. That is the line of like succession. Legal purposes, I'm not inciting violence, but what I mean is like in terms of increasingly extreme responses, number one should be like, hey, you should come out and say that this has some side effects. Number two should be like, oh, hey, we kind of lied about that, but it is bad that this woman's paralyzed and she's 20. Number three would be like, all right, they didn't tell you it was dangerous, and they're also not acknowledging the injuries. Okay, this person can go on Facebook and say, hey, like there's a woman I've had on here, like Callie Varner. I think she's younger than me, and she had like 3 strokes after she got it, and she like still can't function. And it's like, so finally she just went online and was like, I need to talk about this, and she got banned from all these platforms. All of her social circles were like putting her down. They're like, you conspiracy theorists, like Trump tard. And she's like in the hospital learning to walk again. She's like, do I look like I'm lying? And so my point is like we've already gone through all of the rational things of like what should happen, and to me there is no other reasonable response to this. Is the cartridge box moment, but not guns, but it's people doing it's the extreme, it's the emotionally invested, the I have no other choice. And what that is going, oh, we're not getting any of it. And if I have to want my kids out of the school, we're homeschooling. Right? We're not doing any of it. And it's that is like that's where I see it is there kind of is no other. I mean, like, what do you? And I've seen on this pod again, like interviewing people who've like they're in wheelchairs and they're like, my best friends are texting me, telling me I'm promoting like dangerous misinformation. And she was like, I was on the lacrosse team last week, and now I'm on crutches because my legs don't work. Like, and then they talk about it, and you've been permanently suspended from Twitter. What is the other response? It's either it's hurt you or you've lost someone, and you go, yeah, you know what? It's normally I'd be a reasonable person and I'd say let's examine this, but they've shown they have no intention of being reasonable. So I don't think you can be reasonable in response. And objectively, the overcorrection will probably be bad. I just would imagine on like a law of averages, the overcorrection is probably gonna be the overcorrection after 9/11. TSA, Patriot Act, NSA, Dragnet surveillance, domestic, Department of Homeland Security, fusion centers. The overcorrection was bad. But leading up to it is you could just go get on a plane. Now, this is all, assuming the U.S. government didn't do 9/11, which they probably did. But, like, that's all aside from that. The overcorrection is never good. And this is what the overcorrection is going to be. And again, it might be perfect, but there's probably going to be a lot of preventable deaths. And it's going to be like, hey, man, I don't think you can really blame them. And in 50 years, it will be like, how come our parents didn't get us any of the vaccines? And we're like, well, you have to kind of understand where they came from. And you show them all the old footage of COVID or something. In the same way that it's hard to understand like why grandma and grandpa would like my grandmother used to save the wrapping paper from presents and like put it away. And it's like, why do you do? And it's like, oh well, you were born in the Great Depression, you lived through World War II. Yeah, you probably can't wrap your head around the true paranoid fear of scarcity. And to us, we kind of go, yeah, it's funny to kind of make fun of now, but you have to understand where she's coming from. She's born in the 20s. You go, okay, it's probably going to be something like that. How come we didn't get any vaccines, or nobody of your friends got vaccines? Are like, well, because by then it will all be declassified and everyone involved will be dead, so there'll be no impetus to keep the files, redacted. And we're going to see the true numbers of what the VAERS injuries were. Because don't they say I think Dr. McCullough said VAERS is assumed to be like 1/100th of the real numbers. So it's going to come out it's going to be 2062, and someone's going to be doing an interview, and it's going to, oh, we just got the documents. They just, the classification just expired. Oh, wow, like 4.1 million people died in the United States from that shot, or whatever the number is. And you can go, oh, yeah, maybe grandpa wasn't so crazy. Like, that is what's going to happen. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just what's going to happen. Like, it will probably be bad. There will probably be some negatives in there. But this is the only other response is to just, I'm done with it. The whole thing's, we're not doing any of it. Yeah, so sorry. I don't know where I was going with that, but.
Well, it's interesting you point that out. I mean, I'd say there are a lot of parents who already were done with the vaccines before COVID.
Sure, yeah.
So from, again, personal experience, I mean, some of the most interesting testimonies you'll hear are families who maybe have 4 kids, where they vaccinated their first kid completely according to the CDC schedule. They had problems. The second one, they maybe did a few less. They didn't do the hepatitis B at birth, and they maybe had a few less problems. Then for the third and the fourth kid, they decided not to give them any vaccines, and they have no issues. They don't have any allergies. They don't have any ADHD. They don't have any asthma. So those parents, I don't think they need any
They don't need it's
science
right in front of
or,
them.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
they
I mean,
go,
their study was their kids.
yeah, I don't need any. I don't need to prove this to anyone. I can see it.
Exactly. Exactly. So those parents, I mean, regardless, I mean, COVID, yes, of course, there was coercion and there were mandates and they try to push people into getting them, but the parents are really, really stuck by the health of their kids because that's the most important thing is the health of your children or yourself. I mean, you can't, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you don't really function well if you don't have your health. So, and I've seen it as well. I've witnessed people, vaccinated and unvaccinated, and the health difference between the unvaccinated tend to be healthier. They don't have all these problems, and they tend to be less aggressive as well, which is interesting. So I think ultimately, if say worst case scenario, or in some cases best case scenario, people stop buying vaccines or stop getting vaccines, yeah, there might be upticks in epidemics of measles and maybe pertussis. But again, we can treat those. And I think what will happen very quickly, if that did happen, and I'm not saying it will, and I'm not saying even that I want it to. Actually, no, if I'm being honest, I probably would say yes. But I think what we'll realize is that, hang on a minute, all these infectious diseases, which aren't actually the major cause of disease and death in the Western countries, we can manage those. That's not what costs us so much. What costs us huge amounts of money in the US and in Switzerland alike is cancer, cardiovascular disease.
Obesity, heart disease. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's going through the roof at the moment. I mean,
yeah,
cancer in young patients is going through the roof. Like
yeah.
people who are being diagnosed these super aggressive cancers under 40 years old and who are dead within 6 months. I mean, of course that's happened in the past and it will always happen. But we seem to be seeing a huge uptick in that. And again, authorities are like, oh, we don't know what's the cause of this excess mortality or why we're having so many more young people who are getting diagnoses of cancer. Look at their vaccination status, why don't you? And then when you see how they manipulated the definition of vaccinated, and this was again worldwide. This wasn't just in the US or the UK and Switzerland, this was worldwide. To be, remember in September 21,
Yeah,
I think
vaccinated,
in
fully
the
vaccinated, partially. Yeah.
exactly, and they were doing the guilt tripping of people like, oh, our hospitals are only full of COVID patients who are unvaccinated. Well, the definition of vaccinated was that you had to wait 2 weeks after your second dose. Then you were considered vaccinated. So anybody who got a vaccine, say your first dose or your second dose, and were in hospital 2 days later, you were classified as
Unvaccinated.
unvaccinated. And that happened after also the polio vaccine campaign back in the 50s. So this is the same playbook they've been using for years, for decades, and they've just basically used it again for COVID. And why would they do that? I mean, the only reason why you would do that is to manipulate people's opinion, to guilt trip people who didn't get the vaccine, which is again, it's unconscionable as a from a public health perspective.
Well,
So
it's like
for all, sorry.
it's like the primary thing is like, do you have bedside manner?
Mm,
That's like the primary first, do no harm. That's like the prime. It's not like a. It's not an asterisk somewhere. Like at the end of the MD. By the way, try to be nice. That's the Hippocratic Oath. Is first, do no harm. Like it's a meme how out front it is.
mm,
And instead, it's when you sorry I know you interrupt. I had on a Dr. Aditi Bhargava, head of mRNA research at UCSF, San Francisco Med School, which is like the Harvard of the West Coast. She was like on the Biden campaign. She's all fine. You're allowed to fucking do whatever you want. And she came on my show eventually, and she was like, "I cannot believe the man like I tried to or I helped get in is now telling people like this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated." And she's not like a conservative woman. And she came out like unsolicited. I didn't ask her to. She was like, I have to like get this out there. She came on and did like PowerPoint slides and everything, and was just like, this is unconscious or conscionable. I don't know what the word is. She's like, I can't do this. And it's again, it's not like it's just you and I screaming. It's when you have on these Dr. Malone with the mRNA vaccine patent, Dr. McCullough, the most published cardiologist in world history, when they come on here and they're like above all else, like you should have the freedom to choose. And when that's pulled away, I don't
mm.
I don't think there's any other reasonable response than to just not get it.
And doctors should have the free choice as well to be able to promote or not according to their patient. And this was something as well during COVID. We saw, I mean, kudos to a lot of the doctors who did speak out, but I understand and appreciate the pressure that they were under and the sanctions that they risked if they dared speak out against the public health program of vaccinating the whole population. So it's very, very hard. The doctors are no longer allowed to do their job, so, based on their patient relationship and the understanding of their patient in front of them, to say, hey, I don't think the vaccine is a good idea for you. I mean, here in Switzerland, they were sanctioning doctors who said that because often, unfortunately, it's the patients who denounce these doctors saying, hey, my doctor said I shouldn't get the vaccine. And they were immediately put back in their place and threatened with losing their license, which, again, a doctor is supposed to exercise their profession. In French, you say en pleine âme et conscience, so in full appreciation of their conscience and their soul. And that's been eradicated. And again, in the understanding that it's a public health emergency and they're supposed to follow authority without questioning, which is very dangerous, very, very dangerous because public health authorities specialists or people, sorry, people who work in public health authorities, at least here in Switzerland, and I think it's the same case for the US, they're often not doctors. They might be epidemiologists, they might be health economists, but they know nothing about clinical experience treating a patient. And this is again what we saw in the beginning of COVID is how they were suppressing treatments. Any doctor who spoke out about, hey, I'm having good results with hydroxychloroquine or with zinc, with antibiotics, they were shut up. Now, since when have we ever done that in history, where you're not allowed to treat patients? You're
Often
not
happens.
allowed to try and prevent them from going to hospital, because that was the whole thing, 2 weeks to flatten the curve so we don't, overuse the hospitals and overrun the hospitals. Logically, you'd say, okay, well, let's try to make sure we can prevent people from going to the hospital. But here in Switzerland, like in the US, it was no, stay at home, maybe take a paracetamol, but come to the hospital if you can't breathe anymore. By that time, it's already too late. So there's so many signs with COVID, which basically expose the problem in general from regulatory capture. I mean, the FDA, we have the same situation with Swissmedic, which is our equivalent of the FDA, which is 85% funded by the pharmaceutical industry and continue to this day to say that vaccines are safe and effective from 5 years old and pregnant women. Uh, this is a whole problem, which I would say a gift of COVID is that it has exposed this. It's brought people together. And I think next time they bring a pandemic, because the World Health Organization is always reminding us that the next one's around the corner, we will be way more connected than they were before COVID and way more aware of their tactics and their strategies to try undermine medical professionals who really want to help their patients and undermine people who want to protect their bodily integrity and have the right to choose what they inject in their body. So we shall see the next time round, but it's going to be interesting because they might use something a little bit more scary than just a bad flu. So something like Ebola. Uh, who knows? Nipah virus seems to be the big one they're talking about a lot now. So we'll see what they try to throw on us next time. But I think they've damaged the unfortunate consequence of what they've done with COVID is that people have lost trust in the whole healthcare medical
Hmm.
system. So they won't even go to hospital even if they have a serious issue, like even if it's just mechanical, you broke their arm, okay, you might go to hospital then. But I know a lot of people who will do anything they can to avoid a hospital because they see it like a death trap. And they don't trust anything that comes out their doctors because they see them as bought, paid servants of the state who aren't interested in in the people, but in just, staying in line. And that's unfortunate because there are lots of very, very fantastic people working within the medical field. There are lots of advances in medicine that are very helpful. And that's the damage, which I think is going to be really negative in the long term and even in the midterm. But unfortunately, this is a consequence of being dishonest with your own people, with the medical system being corrupted by financial interests and political interests, because that's what COVID was. It was a political stunt. It wasn't, there was no way you can look back on it now with 5 years of hindsight and say they were doing the best they thought they could because it was a new virus. I mean, first of all, SARS-CoV-2. So second time around we've seen it. And it's not, we've had pandemic plans in place for over 20 years. And it's not like it's the first time we come in contact with a pandemic or an epidemic. So we shall see next time. But
Yeah, in terms of the people not going to the hospital, again, there is no other response when you've seen everything else and every other concentric circle of resistance has been completely voided. Yeah, I mean, short of a broken bone, your next thing is like, yeah, well, I'm probably just not gonna go there because it's not something where you go and then you learn something. You go and you die. There is no learning from it. And again, it's I don't even think people are necessarily wrong in thinking that. And it's, I guess, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this, is the one that really gets me is the suppression of treatment for a couple of reasons. It's one thing if you see them pushing the vax, you're like, it's like, well, they're trying to make money. It's kind of like, you grow up. Of course they are. The world's not all, kumbaya. But then to suppress something, that's where you go, wait, because however many people the vaccine killed, you have to look at the total number of deaths from COVID, which there are a lot, that could have been prevented. And it wasn't unknown, and it's not hindsight. It's the final episode that got me banned from YouTube was Dr. McCullough telling people to take vitamin D. That was it. That was the one that got me booted. Not anything else. That's the thing that gets me to the point of like, oh, this is unforgivable. Like, this is, you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly what you were doing, and it's not lying to sell the new product. Well, this is actually the newest thermos, and it has an advanced H2O. And I go, yeah, I'm not really into that. I think I'm just gonna get some tap water. And they go, we cut the line. We cut the water line. Then I go, oh, you're a fucking gangster. This is what this is. And so, looking back and going, they tried their best. I mean, I'm with you. I want to extend that, because we all, I mean, I look back at myself in 2 years and go, I was an idiot. And then 2 years from now, I'll look at me now and go, you're an idiot. But, and the analogy I always use is this, is like, World War II ended with the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And if we didn't do that, we were going to invade with 1 million men and blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of what ended it. And it was, we were willing to do something that intense, nuking a city of primarily civilians. And that's a insane move to do. But the war, including civilians, had killed around 85 million people, dwarfing anything in human history. Okay. It was total war, meaning you threw everything and anything at ending the war. Something we were developing at the same time as the atomic bomb was this other thing, which is almost comical. We were going to use like 200,000 bats, and they were going to tie these little sacks of glycerin jelly, flammable jelly, with little charges on them, like a firecracker. And this is some shit out of Looney Tunes. And the plan was, we tested it out in the desert. You drop them out of a plane during the day. Bats like the dark. So they go and find houses, and they go to the attic, or they go under the roofs or under the decks. They're going to stay there until night. And so you detonate the bomb before they leave after the night when they go out hunting. The idea was that in this way, you'd have a bunch of little bombs spread all throughout, say, Tokyo, where the structures were primarily wooden at the time. You drop all these bats out of bomb planes, and they would go down, and they would find this thing, and then they'd detonate, and it would burn the city down. And we tried it out in the desert, and it actually worked too well. They had a little test city, and not only did they burn down that, the bats actually went to a nearby Air Force base too, and burned down like a hangar. However, around the same time, actually almost 80 years ago, July 16th, so a little over, the A-bomb worked, and we weren't sure if it was going to work. And we went, oh, that works. And they went, hey, let's not do the bad thing. That's kind of stupid. And I think I would imagine that the terminology is something along the lines of like, that was kind of retarded. Yeah. And they put that away, and so they dropped the nukes. My point is, that is total war. That's looking back and going, they were trying their hardest. The nukes, and if it didn't work, hey, we got this thing from Looney Tunes where we're going to throw a bunch of bats at a city. Total war against a pandemic would be, we have the nuke, which is the super advanced thing, the mRNA vaccine, and there's going to be downsides to it, radiation. But if that doesn't work, we're also trying something over here with hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D, zinc, chromium, all this turmeric, and get some sunlight and make sure, you get your cardio up. But when you look at one of them and go, we're not doing the bats, we're never doing the bats, we're just doing this, then you go, you have a vested interest in selling this. And not only that, much like war, You actually don't care if people die in the pursuit of your goal. That is why it is unforgivable what they did. Is because you could say, if we put DARPA on it, we got these brand new things, mRNA, and sure, maybe if it's total war, you do cover up the side effects, maybe. But you would also say, and if this doesn't work, we got these generic things. You can get them for like 10 cents for like a month's worth. Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, it's one. You would throw everything at it. And it's not that they didn't throw everything at it and they only pushed one. That would be bad. They pushed one and silenced the other. That's unforgivable. That is conscious, willful, knowing complicity. And to me, they're unforgivable. And I don't think there's any other rational response than to go, I'm just not getting any of it. Leave me alone. So I know I was rambling there. I apologize.
No, it's a good point, because the existence of the treatments would have nullified the existence of the vaccine. So they had to suppress. Because if the treatments had worked, the vaccine would have never been able to be authorized. Because one of the conditions is there's nothing else to help. So that obviously made sense.
And if your true desire was to fight it, you would go, I don't care if one of them nullifies the other. We're trying to win.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And they didn't. Which is, I look back at World War. Did we need to drop the nukes? I have no idea. There's arguments pro and con. My point is I look back and I go, I think they were actually trying. I legitimately believe. I'm sure there were some nefarious people making money. I think they were actually trying. I can't say that about this.
It was an experiment. Huh? The A-bomb back in the days, they hadn't tested it anywhere apart from the Nevada deserts. I think they wanted to see as well what destruction it could actually do, and what were the
Absolutely.
long-term effects.
They
So
did.
it was
that
the same
was a
thing here.
huge thing. That was a huge thing. Let's see what happens here. Yeah.
Same thing for the mRNA. Let's see what happens.
Exactly. And yeah. So, we got to wrap it up though. I have to jump on another call. If you could send me a link to the book, and I'll put it in the description. And then this episode will be up, I believe, tomorrow. Send me any of the links you want, and I'll put them in the description. And obviously, goes without saying, I'd love to have you on again sometime.
With pleasure, Tommy. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming on here. So I'll text it to you when it's up. I'll email it to you when it's up. If you could send me the links to the books and all that, whatever you want in there, I'll throw it in there. Thank you so much for your time. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, thank you so much. Peace.